Okay, also warum könnte das jemand nicht gehört haben? It had been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it, so clearly I can't be involved. Okay. On the evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times. In question, a member of the crew was on duty. Das stimmt ja nicht. Das stimmt ja nicht, weil wir hier das Telegram nicht. Den Evacuation Grill hatten, wo alle Crewmember sich versammelt sollten. Hier. Yes, as the court has heard, there was a crewman posted outside Judge Goku's cabin. However, we can be sure that contrary to the witness' claim, the guard wasn't there at all times. What? I have here a notice of a particular event that was scheduled to take place aboard the steamship on the 31st. Well, where did you get that? It's evidence gathered by Mr. Herlock Sholmes. You were acquainted yesterday, if you remember. Herlock Sholmes again. According to this itinerary, after leaving the port of Dunkirk at exactly 10 PM and for a period of 20 minutes, all crewmen of the SS Grouse were to gather on deck for an evacuation drill. All crewmen were away from the posts, and during the 20-minute interval, of course, any gunshots emanating from your cabin would have been heard by no one. In summary, Judge Goku, you had ample opportunity to commit the crime. Ah! Aber ich glaube nicht, dass es war.
Objection!
A 20-minute window of opportunity. That is an excellent find, Rionosuke. But it amounts to nothing. Why? Because the witness clearly stated in his testimony that no incident occurred in his cabin. Unless you have some decisive evidence that can show his testimony to be false. Your accusation is nothing more than conjecture. Very true. Well, counsel. Inspector Gregson was killed in Judge Goku's cabin that night. I'm certain of it. Because the defense has the evidence to prove it. You will present the evidence for the defense at once, counsel. What proof do you have that the victim's life was taken in Jigoku's cabin on the 31st October? Den Koffer nicht, oder? Subsequently removed from Street 9. Der Koffer nicht. Inspector's identification auch nicht. Inspector with some pocket watch, you've wound up without fail every single day, having wound up. It started ticking again. Wir haben aber auch sehr viel Beweise, ne? 4 Seiten. Ich glaube, so viele Beweise hatten wir zumindest bei The Great Ace Attorney noch nie. Bei Ace Attorney allgemein will ich es nicht sagen, aber bei The Great Ace Attorney. Wir speichern mal wieder kurz. Okay. Complete. War das nicht irgendwie von einer Taschenuhr was? Und Gregson hatte ja eine Taschenuhr, das wird ja irgendwie naheliegen. Ich hatte gedacht, dass es vielleicht die Taschenuhr von dem Richter dann ist, weil das in seinem Raum gefunden ist, aber es könnte natürlich auch heißen, dass Gregson in dem Raum war. Aber ist das ein Beweis, dass sein Leben dort genommen wurde? Ach komm, fuck it, wir probieren es aus. Judge Goku, this was found in your cabin yesterday. Okay, das ist scheinbar richtig. What is it? The crown of a pocket watch. A pocket watch. And if you will observe, the victim's pocket watch, which we know he treasured, is missing precisely that part. Ja, stimmt, die Figur, mit der man das aufziehen konnte, war ja unten Okay. It can't be! Moreover, this crown is a perfect fit on the spindle protruding from the victim's watch. Now, the fact that this was retrieved from Jachigoku's cabin tells us what the victim's watch almost certainly broke there. Grrr. In other words, the victim was killed on the 31st during the 20-minute evacuation drill. In the cabin occupied by you, Jachigoku. Well, your ways are sharp, aren't you, you young murderer?
Objection!
Expertly maneuvered, Ryunosuke. And your argument sounds entirely plausible. At first. But rather like this pocket watch, it's full of cracks. What? And I believe Jachigoku feels the same way. I was wrong to acquit you earlier in the year. Sorry? If I'd known that it would result in anyone having to listen to this drivel, I would have declared you guilty just to spare the world your ridiculous bombast. Das solltest du nicht als Richter sagen unbedingt, das macht dich nur verdächtiger. I think it's clear that the witness will have to give further testimony. When you hear what actually happened in my cabin that night, you'll notice a pitfall into which you've stumbled. Prior to your renewed testimony, I would like to clarify one point. The fact that this part of the victim's watch was discovered in your cabin means that you acknowledged he was there, I presume? Yes, I do. Very well then. You may proceed to give your formal testimony. About what exactly happened in your cabin about your aboard the ship on the evening of the 31st October. Of course, as a man of the law, I have no intention of obstructing justice. Was sei eure Frage jetzt? Means that you acknowledge she was there, okay. Also, Gregson war da, das wird jetzt auch von Jigoku gedingst. Anerkannt. Of course, as a man of the law, I have no intention of obstructing justice. Werden wir sehen. Witness testimony. The events in the cabin. I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my evening meal in the dining room. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. I soon took care of him with an Ippenseo throw. Ippenseo throw. He couldn't wait to run away after that. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder. The inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain because his body was found in London. Ippenseo. A common jiu-jitsu martial arts technique in my country. I was careful not to use too much force, but the man obviously landed too heavily for his watch to take. So, Ryunosuke Naruhodo, I imagine you can see the flaw in your logic now, can't you? What? The fact that the pocket watch was broken in the witness cabin in no way proves that the victim's murder took place there. Aha! I've no doubt the inspector intended to kill me, but he didn't manage to pull the trigger. Yes, because he was merely the tactician, not the Reaper's hand of death. Well, the testimony appears to make perfect sense as far as I can tell. Let me express my deep gratitude for your understanding, my lord. But if this testimony holds, Judge Jigoku will be deemed to have had no involvement in the case. Well, counsel, I really see no reason for wasting precious court time here on the cross-examination. Sorry, my lord, the defense has the right to cross-examine, and I don't intend to squander that. you're an embarrassment to your countrymen, not knowing when you're beaten. In that case, proceed, Mr. Naruhodo. Okay. Cross-examination. The events in the cabin. I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my evening meal in the dining room.
Hold it!
Because the so-called guard posted at your cabin door had just let your killer pass, you mean? Apparently, Gregson told the crewman he was a police inspector, which was the truth, of course. He wouldn't have had his identification with him, though. He had this trench coat and moustache, not to mention the bag of chips. I imagine the crewman was convinced. But the man accompanying him would have had 2 swords slung around his waist. You mean me? Who else? Yes, that's true. You would have hoped the sight of a few swords might have set off alarm bells in the guard's head. The point is, I left the cabin before its occupant returned, and I immediately disembarked the ship. Certainly, all I can tell you is that only the inspector was waiting for me when I arrived back at my cabin. And you entered without any inkling of suspicion. That's right, none whatsoever. Okay. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me.
Hold it!
Obviously, you're talking about Inspector Gregson. Yes, though at the time I didn't know the man's name. And there was no time for introductions. I value my life over manners. By which you mean that the inspector was there to assassinate you, I suppose? That was certainly the impression given by the gun pointing in my direction. But I've never seen the muzzle of a revolver shake about so much in all my life. The muzzle... Anyone would think the man had never shot somebody before. Believe it or not, most of us haven't. Anyway, there was no time to call for the help to the crewman at the door, so I dealt with the man himself, and myself. I soon took care of him with an Ippen sail throw, though he couldn't wait to run away after that.
Hold it!
Even though the man had a gun, that was a very brave move, wasn't it? Ha 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 ha! My Ippen sail is far faster than a bullet, I can assure you. But surely all that commotion caused the crewman to come in, didn't it? Yes, of course. He burst in immediately without knocking. The inspector hurled himself at the stocky fellow and just managed to slip past him to make his escape. The outstanding guard does it again. Hurt himself, okay. Luckily, there aren't many situations I can't get out of using a quick Ippen sail throw. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder. Oh, whoops. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder.
Hold it!
The crown snapped off and the glass covering the face of the watch was cracked. Preferable to the man's head being pulled off or a spine cracking, wouldn't you say? Not that the man was spared for long. A bullet to the chest soon saw to that. But the point is, the broken pocket watch doesn't prove that a murder took place. Absolutely not. All the watch proves is the power of my jujutsu throw. Whatever you say, it doesn't quite ring true that no shot was fired in that cabin. Because there was an obvious bullet hole in the wall. Ha 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 ha! What are you talking about? That's what the star of your lowbrow detective stories told you, is it? Well, I don't care for such fiction. Haven't you worked it out yet, you little stripling? No murder took place in my cabin. The inspector was clearly killed, having returned to Britain, because his body was found in London.
Hold it!
But there's no evidence that proves the victim ever returned to London alive. Just take a moment to think that the idea of you're through now struggling. What? If the inspector was killed on the steamship in France, how on earth could he have got back to Britain? When people die, their bodies remain at that same spot. It's a devil of a thing. Well, then obviously the culprit must have moved the body. How exactly? Carrying a corpse of a ship in your arms would raise a few eyebrows at least, don't you think? Well, yes, that's true, but all passengers' luggage is inspected when it is unloaded from arriving vessels. And I would like to think the border police would query the corpse of an English gentleman as hand luggage. If the murder had taken place aboard the ship, you would imagine the body would have been disposed of at sea. There would be no sense in risking being caught by attempting to transport the body back to Britain. Let's kill that idea then. But perhaps not. Miss Susato? We've heard that the first-class passengers were under constant scrutiny by the crewmen posted to guard them, which would mean that the culprit had no opportunity to dispose of the body in the sea. Yes, that's true. So transporting the body to Britain may have been the only viable alternative. Dear me, you really are new to this, aren't you? I thought I'd been perfectly clear, but it seems I'm going to have to explain it in words you can understand. I think I ought to alter my testimony. With your consent, of course, my lord. I have no objection. State your amended testimony now. Okay. There's no possible way I could have transported the victim's corpse back to Britain. Ja, ist da kein Weg mehr? Kein Weg? Small component, evacuation, itinerary. Muss ja was mit ihm zu tun haben, ne? Wenn das Statement überhaupt was ist. Aber, guck mal hier, das Foto. Wait a moment. Wait a moment. Könnte es dieser Koffer hier sein, der ein bisschen verdächtig groß ist, wo sich auch eine gewisse Person schon drin versteckt hat, weil es beweist, dass man da drin Personen transportieren kann. Könnte das sein? Könnte das sein? Seems kinda sus to me, aber ich speichere erstmal. Ich speichere erstmal. Nicht erstmal mal, lol. Okay, ich brauche nicht nochmal speichern. Aber ich präsente das mal. Das Foto hier.
Objection!
There's no possible way he could have moved Inspector Wexton's body, you say. I would say the opposite is true. And what's that supposed to mean? Far from being impossible for you to do. The transporting of Inspector Wexton's body back to Britain is something only you could do. What are you talking about, Ryonosuke? As well as being a judge, Mr. Jigoku is also Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Which means he's exempt from having his luggage searched when he enters the country. Stimmt! Das wurde ja gesagt, dass sein Luggage nicht durchsucht worden ist. We learned that when we first met you upon your arrival in London. Ist zwar eine Bullshit-Regel, aber so war es damals. Well, all those passport checks and luggage searches at the border took rather a lot of time. I must say, I'm very envious of your ministerial status. You didn't have to go through any of that, did you? Ha! I knew you were jealous. Ha 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 ha. Mann, das wäre beides interessant. Wenn sie Kazuma den Mörder machen würden oder Jigoku. Weil einen Richter als Mörder hatten wir auch noch nicht. Und auch ein Richter, der so zwar mehr on the side, aber auch reoccurring ist. Der ist ja seit erst Fall 1 dabei. I presume you recall this Judge Jigoku. It's a photograph we took in the foyer of the hotel to mark the occasion. As the court will know, you have with you your large travel trunk. Large enough, in fact, to have a corpse inside. Mr. Naruhodo, surely you're not suggesting... I'm afraid I am, yes. 3 days ago, when we were chatting innocently with the new arrivals from Japan in the hotel, the body of Inspector Gregson was just meters away from us, inside Judge Jigoku's trunk. Order, order! Order in court! I'm skeptical, counsel, that a grown man's body could fit inside even the largest travel trunk. It could. Because I happen to know that the witness himself, a man of considerable size, fits inside his trunk. And verifying that would be extremely simple, wouldn't it, Judge Jigoku? But inside his trunk? How horrifying! And after we'd spoken with you at the Great Waterloo Hotel, you had the opportunity to visit the apparent scene on Fresno Street, taking your trunk with you in a cab to deposit the inspector's body. Okay. I don't have to listen to this nonsense. Dr. Gowie, the coroner who examined the body, has confirmed the possibility. She's acknowledged there are signs that steps may have been taken to disguise the true time of death. The onset of the body's decomposition could have been delayed by storing it in a refrigerator. Counsel, as I remember explaining yesterday, refrigerators of the requisite size are few and far between. Yes, I'm sure they are, but one place they are certainly found is one on large ocean liners. Such ships are equipped with electrically refrigerated cold rooms to keep food fresh on the long sea voyage, and the SS Grouse is no exception. Professor Mikutoba told me about it only yesterday. Well, Judge Jigoku? However much you prolong this debate, you can't eliminate the truth. All the evidence points to you being the killer. Ha 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 ha. Well, this is all very heartening. Ich möchte es gerne glauben, dass es Judge Jigoku ist und nicht Kazuma, aber ich kann es irgendwie nicht glauben. I can see that it was a wise move, letting Asogi and you embark on the study tour. What are you talking about now? Logical reasoning, of course. All court proceedings will be built on logical reasoning in the new century. And I can see that you've both laid firm foundations for that already. Judge Jigoku, please. Stop diverting attention from the issue at hand. The defense has made an accusation against you. How do you respond? Respond? There's really no need for me to respond, is there? Why ever not? Because before you can even begin to answer the question of when the victim was killed, you must first establish one key fact. Where was the victim killed? It's quite logical. The actual scene of the crime. The prosecution's stances are noted. The killing took place on Fresno Street when the gunshot was heard. As the accused, Baroque van Zieks, shot the victim at point-blank range. Since no tangible evidence exists to disprove the prosecution's claim at this time, the defense's deductions amount to little more than an elaborate fairy tale. I'm afraid that's how the logical reasoning the British are known for really works, young Stripling. Okay, ich habe kurz nicht aufgepasst, Entschuldigung. Because we can even begin to answer the question of when the victim was killed, we must first establish one key fact. Where the victim was killed. It's quite logical. Entschuldigung. The actual scene of the crime. The prosecution stand as unaltered. The killing took place on Fresno Street and the gunshot was heard as the accused Baroque von Sieg shot the victim point blank range. Since no tangible evidence exists to prove the prosecution's claim at this time, the defense's deduction amounted to little more than an elaborate fairy tale. I'm afraid that's how the logical reasoning the British are known for really works, young stripling. The victim was shot in that little room on Fresno Street and died instantly. I'm afraid it's the prosecution's claim that's the only fairy tale here. How can you say that? Quite simply, because that claim directly contradicts a certain piece of evidence in our possession. Very tantalizing, counsel. I think you had better explain yourself to the court, don't you? The prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that claim. Puh. Das hier vielleicht, weil er da so zusammengekauert liegt?
Take that!
A photograph of the victim in the very location you claim he wasn't killed. Okay, es war richtig scheinbar. Yes, but the point is the posture of the body itself. So eine Posture, so eine Haltung hätte man ja eh, wenn man in einem Koffer drin ist oder so. If Inspector Gregson had been shot there in that room, it's out of the question that his body would have been curled up in a ball like that. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but your logic is flawed. Ah ja, jetzt dieses Dude dann dazwischen, das ist... Ich weiß, das ist schon die ganze Zeit im Game, aber irgendwie... Du merkst, dass die Spannung nochmal gestiegen ist. But your logic is flawed. He could easily have adopted that tilted position due to the pain of the shot, which subsequently proved fatal.
Objection!
Er ist sofort gestorben. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Judge Jigoku, but it's your logic that is flawed. What? According to this autopsy report, the victim died instantly. He would have felt no pain, much less have been able to draw himself into that position. Ah! Which begs the question of why the victim's body is curled up in that way. Though the answer should be abundantly clear by now. You are suggesting the inspector's body took on that posture ahead of his arrival on Fresno Street, before it was coldly turned out on the floor, from the inside of a large travel trunk. No, you're quite right. The shape of the body, it looks exactly as if it had been kept in a confined space. Judge Shigoku, present your trunk for examination. I believe it's very possible that it will contain traces of the victim's blood. Ah! Present my trunk? I refuse. What? On what grounds? I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs from the Empire of Japan. I shouldn't have to put up with this treatment just because of some stripling's baseless accusations. In other words, Judge Jigoku, there's blood on your trunk. I decline to answer that, was quasi ein Eingeständnis ist. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have privilege.
Objection!
At this moment, you are not a government minister. You are a witness in a trial in Britain's highest court. I don't care who you are or what your status outside this courtroom might be. You will not withhold information. Nothing is more important than the truth. Ah! Order in court. Well, Mr. Jigoku, What's it to be? You can't be serious. You did it. Have you no shame at all, Kazuma Asogi? What? Very well, I admit it. I did bring the inspector's body into the country. Inside my trunk, exactly as postulated by the defense. Well, you... Dear God, outrageous. So it was you. No, I admit to nothing more than what I've said. Okay, also outet sich als Komplize, aber nicht als Mörder. Of killing the man, I certainly have no recollection. What on earth is that cryptic statement supposed to mean? I merely disposed of the inspector's body, which was left in my cabin, in order to avoid unwanted attention. As a judicial assistant over there pointed out, I had no chance to throw it into the ocean. So, I decided my only option was to bring it into Britain with me and dispose of it somewhere else. You can't still deny it. If you didn't do it, then who on earth did kill the man? As you know, there was one other person in my cabin that night. He had the opportunity. And moreover, he'd already accepted a mission to take the inspector's life. Oh! That's right, who else could it have been? It was you, Kazuma Asogi. Macht leider Sinn. You... I never thought you'd stoop to this, Jigoku. You've taken the words straight out of my mouth, Prosecutor Kazuma Asogi. You thought by leaving the body in my cabin you could pin the crime on me, did you? Well, the prosecution counsel has already admitted to visiting the witness cabin on the night in question. Yes, on an assassination mission, no less. You wouldn't... So, what do you make of that, young stripling? Okay. You've heard my testimony, now, and that's all I have to say on the matter. I'll admit to nothing more. I don't believe this. Counsel for the defense. What is your position now? The court awaits your response to the witness assertion. The assertion on the night in question, the victim's assailant was in fact Mr. Kazuma Asogi. This isn't the dead and it seems to be. The answer's right in front of me. It comes down to Jigoku, or Kazuma. Both of them had the opportunity to kill Gregson, but only one of them did it. Also meine beiden Theorien, Kazuma oder Jigoku. And I am just a step away from proving who. Very well, the defense is ready to respond to the assertion put forward by Judge Jigoku. The idea that the victim's murder could have been committed by Prosecutor Asogi is... Es ist halt beides möglich. Es ist halt beides möglich. In meinen Augen. Ist es möglich oder nicht möglich, dass Kazuma Gregson umgebracht hat?